In our project there are a couple of components that need to react on time updates, and since we update the time every second, those components should listen for time updates every second and do necessary actions. So for example, let's consider this component which shows label of the hour. So when this hour becomes current, this label should become purple. So we need to listen for time updates from within this component. Let's switch over to the editor, open up that component. It is called timeline hour. And in here we can see the constant called classes, which stores all the CSS classes that are being applied to the root element of this component. But the problem is that this expression is not reactive, so it is run only once when current component is created, but then it will never be reevaluated again, regardless of time changes. So we're gonna have to turn this whole expression into computed property, and inside of this computed property we need to reference reactive time to make this computed property be updated along with the current time. So in here, instead of receiving the current hour by calling this function current hour, we need to reference our reactive object which stores current time, which is this object called now. So let's get the current hour by referencing reactive date and calling method getHours. Then let's scroll up and change an import of current hour function on the import of the computed function. And then we also have to import our reactive object now from the module time. And now we're gonna make this list of classes react on time updates. And the way we're gonna do this is by simply wrapping this whole expression into computed function, and this computed function will be reevaluated every time reactive date object will change. So that means that this array of classes will be reevaluated every second, since our reactive date object updates every second. So now in the browser, once our indicator reaches the next hour, which means the next hour will become current. In this case, the corresponding hour label should become purple. And right away, we can see desired behavior. So let's continue. Another component which should also react on time updates is timeline stopwatch component. And this is the component which renders the following stopwatch. So when stopwatch is running and the hour changes, the stopwatch should automatically be stopped. So now let's see how we can achieve this behavior. The whole stopwatch logic is encapsulated inside this composable function useStopwatch, and there is this isRunningState variable, which stores value true when stopwatch is currently running, otherwise false when it is stopped. So we can watch for changes in this reactive variable by simply using function watchEffect right here. And we're gonna have to check a couple of conditions in here, and if both of these conditions will be true, in this case, we're gonna have to stop the timer. So first of all, we'll have to stop the timer if an hour of the current timeline item object is not equal to the current hour, which we can get by calling getHours method on our reactive date object now. So if current timeline stopwatch does not correspond to the current hour, and if this stopwatch is currently running, in this case, we're going to call function stop, which will stop the timer. The implementation of this function is pretty simple. As we can see, it just stops the timer by calling function clearInterval and updates value of the reactive variable is running. After updating this reactive variable, interface should be properly updated and stopwatch will be stopped. So we just have to import reactive date object now. Let's go up and write down an import statement. We're importing this object from the module time. And now let's switch over to the browser and test this whole behavior. So I'm going to start this timer, and now let's wait until the new hour will be current. And as we can see in this case, our stopwatch was stopped automatically. This is exactly what we are trying to achieve in here. But in addition to that, we should also disable the button of the previous timer and make this button active for the next timer. So in this timeline stopwatch component, let's find the place in the template where start button is rendered. It is in here. So here we need to change the condition which is used inside of this disabled attribute. As we can see in here, we're still calling the function current hour to get the current hour, but the problem is that this current hour function does not reference our reactive object which stores current date. So this function does not have reactive behavior. But in order for Vue to update this part of the UI reactively, it should be dependent on reactive variables. So instead of getting the current hour by calling this function, we need to reference our reactive object now and get current hour by calling getHours method like this. So now let's scroll up and remove unnecessary function current hour, switch over to the browser and test it out. I'm gonna start this timer, wait until the new hour starts, and right away we can see that the start button was disabled for the previous stopwatch and it has become enabled for the next one. So from now on we will be able to start only that stopwatch which corresponds to the current hour, because all other start button of other stopwatches will be disabled. And at the end of this lesson, I'm also going to do a couple of changes inside of timeline items module, because currently in here we're still referencing that function current hour which does not use reactive date object. So instead of calling this current hour function right here, let's reference our reactive date object and get the current hour by calling getHours method. And also let's do the same change one more time in this place. So now we just have to update the import by replacing current hour with now object. And this way current hour is no longer used in our application. So let's switch over to the functions.js and remove declaration of this function. So one more time, let's make sure that we haven't broken anything by doing those changes. Let's start the timer and wait until the new hour begins and make sure that the timer was stopped as well as the button was disabled for the previous stopwatch and it was enabled for the next one. The link to the repository of this project will be in the video description.